Hello and welcome to the Hoop Troop podcast. I am Matt O'Connor, and joining me as he does on all of our shows is my cousin Luke Drobner.
What's up, guys?
Not joining us is my brother Mike O'Connor. He's here in spirit, busy in class, but we have a week until basketball starts. A week from tomorrow. We're recording this Monday, October 10th. Not a tremendous amount going on in the NBA. Just a few interesting storylines. I guess we'll start since the last time we recorded. We obviously made some predictions. First and foremost, I made my pick for Coach of the Year as Ime Udoka. That will not be happening. For those of you who don't know, he had some sort of scandal where he was having like a workplace relationship. I don't know if he was married or if it was just like a long-term girlfriend, whatever it was. Very much cheating with someone who worked for the Celtics. Not great. They suspended him for at least this season, and it sounds like it could be more.
I think there was some type of cover-up going on. I feel like half the news we get out of that story is conflicting. I think there's a lot of people who are like, okay, something really bad happened, right? You don't get suspended for a whole year for having a workplace. You know, you just get like a slap on the wrist, right? Maybe it was like a 1-game suspension or he gets fined or something like that, right? But obviously being suspended a whole year means he did something wrong.
Yeah.
Made someone very uncomfortable. So there's some type of
right. And I mean, that's why it's hard to speculate. And that's what I felt like the whole way that it was breaking, like all the news was coming out was pretty terrible. Cause then people were then speculating like, oh, who's the girl who works with Celtics who was involved? And they got the name wrong. And like everything that could have gone wrong in this reporting was terrible. Then you had people on like ESPN and all these other networks, not defending him, but giving him the benefit of the doubt. And then sure enough, like, people start doing a little more digging, and obviously the information hasn't come out, but people have then backtracked and been like, oh no, it's really bad. So, I'm not going to speculate on it. I more want to look at this from a Celtics perspective and say, what does this do to their organization? They obviously were just in the finals last year. What is having a now replacement head coach who is a guy who does not have coaching experience, like truly sitting on the bench? He's always been in the back row, the row behind. So I'm curious to see what this does for them. I've seen reports that Jason Tatum is kind of stepping up as a leader, but until you really see their product on the court, it's going to be weird. And, let's say for argument's sake, they have a slow start and it's not looking good with this coach. Like, it could get ugly quickly. You had Jaylen Brown, whose name was thrown out in trade talks all off season. Like, I could just see there being some pretty bad emotions on that team.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's going to throw a curveball into your season when your head coach is involved in a scandal of some type.
Do you think this impacts them being like a top 3 team in the East?
100%. Obviously, it's going to have an impact. Whether or not they'll fall out of that top 3, I think has to do less with them as a team and more about how well the other teams in the East play. Obviously, I think they're going to, the difference between having Ime and the new guy, Joe Mazzola, I can't say his name, who's been an assistant coach for a while now. I'm looking at his Wikipedia
He's been around.
So he knows the guys. He knows the personnel. I think it'll come down to his ability to make in-game adjustments. We've seen kind of coaches step in and just have understanding of the game and be able to make the right adjustments just by being a great basketball mind. So maybe this guy's like that, right? You have guys like Ty Lue and Willie Green and all those guys throughout the league. So
you do wonder if he can kind of do more or less what Luke Walton did with those Warriors teams when Steve Kerr was out. I obviously don't think it's kind of comparing apples and oranges, because I feel like that system that the Warriors had in place, it was a well-run machine by that point, and I feel like the Celtics don't quite have that pedigree.
And I think they had established leaders in the locker room as well. So when Kerr wasn't there, I think there was an ability to rally behind Curry and Clay and Draymond. So it like you said, there have been reports that Jason Tatum has stepped up a little bit as a leader. Obviously, Jaylen Brown is on the Players Association, so he has a strong voice, and I'm sure he's heard. But when you think about like longest term Celtics players, you think of like Marcus Smart, Al Horford. So,
they're also going to be without Time Lord, at least for the beginning of the season. Just had knee surgery. Which, I mean, again, begs the question, not to just kind of dunk on the Celtics organization right now, but they've had, over the years, so many complaints about their medical staff and the way that they've treated people. I mean, Isaiah Thomas is kind of the poster child for that, but like, it really is, I just feel like there is a lot of negativity surrounding this team right now. And so obviously they're good enough to kind of right the ship. Like there's enough talent in that locker room, but my God, I mean, I could see this getting ugly quickly. And I don't necessarily know that means like it's a total, like burn this thing to the ground, whatever, but I could just see them having a lost season and them having to regroup next offseason. I could see it getting ugly very fast.
Yeah. And I don't know if they own their own pick or not, but let's say you have one bad year, you get a lottery pick or something like that. Maybe not the worst thing in the whole world. You upgrade a position.
Yeah, I mean,
so is it at the end of the world for the Celtics? No, I still think they're going to be good, right? I still think the Chicago Bulls are a huge question mark. The Toronto Raptors is going to be better than them. I understand like all these coaching changes and stuff like that, but their roster is so talented. You kind of expect Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum to continue to get better, especially because they're so young. Tatum's like 24
now. Yeah,
they have Brogdon. Their roster is pretty complete. They have leaders. They have talent. I still think they're going to be a top 6 team in the East. I still think they're going to be a solid playoff team. I think the difference between this year and last year, obviously they have expectations to make it all the way back to the finals since they were just there. But, how often does that happen? We see it with the Suns losing in the second round. So, I think the difference between having Ime and not having Ime might be a first round exit versus a second round exit. I didn't expect this team to be an Eastern Conference champion again. So,
yeah, I mean, no. And that's kind of what goes into, for those who listen to our last episode, like our predictions. No, we don't think that they're necessarily coming out of the East, but definitely they are a contending team to do so. I just think now there are far too many roadblocks in their way, and maybe they'll overcome them. Who knows? I do think, and we'll get into this later in the show, I think that this deadline is going to be among the weirder that we've seen in the past. So they might be able to bolster their roster at the deadline in ways that I don't think teams have been able to in the past. I just think it's worth monitoring how they do early on, because I think that could obviously dictate how the remainder of the season goes. But I think everyone was kind of expecting something a little more structured in Boston right now, and we're not getting that. So we'll see.
I appreciate that you brought up the deadline, because I feel like we can kind of tie this into Victor Wembanyama playing those 2 preseason games.
I know. I want to save that though. I want to save that because I feel like that's the bulk of what we have to talk. I mean, we're kind of in like an NBA information dead zone. So I feel like the only other story, obviously Victor is the one. And then I was going to use the Celtics and like them being in the finals as a transition to what's going on in Golden State.
Draymond punching Jordan Poole in the face, which is such a tough situation if you're the Warriors, because obviously Draymond's a seasoned.
I mean, he's been there the whole time. Like he's been there for all these runs, and he's been an integral part of it.
He's probably been the second best player on the team statistically during a lot of these runs. When you think about a complete game, playing defense, rebounding, passing, right? Obviously, Steph has been great. They had KD for a while. Clay has been a great shooter, things like that. But when you talk about a complete package, especially as a vocal leader, a disruptor on the defensive end, Draymond Green obviously comes up for them and could easily be made to be the second best player.
And I mean, now he's away from the team. It sounds like he is kind of hoping he'll be back for the beginning of the season, but who knows? That's a week away. But I do think, looking at this team, for me personally, they were already going to have an issue with him going into this offseason, punch aside, because he is going to be a free agent this summer. Were they going to bring him back? Were they going to offer him something that he saw as like, I don't know, commensurate with what obviously he's done for the team? So I think this only exacerbates that issue. I don't know. His days in Golden State might be limited, because I do think they shouldn't let Jordan Poole walk by any stretch. They're going to be in a financial issue this offseason.
The question about Draymond, I think, was less like, do we want to bring him back? I think obviously they would like him back. If you're the Golden State Warriors, you want to keep that core together. Steph, Clay, Draymond, you want to keep that together as long as possible. They play great basketball together. They know how to play with each other. I think the question was, do we want to bring Draymond back on a max? Obviously, he's going to want a huge contract. Right. He feels he deserves it. When you think about his accolades, first team, second team, all defense, whatever it is, he probably deserves a large contract. So,
but that's the thing. See, I that's where I disagree. I think you should be paying someone for what they're going to do for you, not for what they have done for you. And so, yes. like there are gray areas there, and sure, certain situations obviously vary. Like
look at the Damian Lillard contract extension, right? He got a huge contract extension. It was like 4 years, $200 million, right? He's not going to be a 26-year-old Damian Lillard anymore. He's still really, really good, but
no, but he also has the potential to age well. But yes, that contract could get ugly towards the end of it. It obviously depends on
the
how
Westbrook contract. You know, that's just how it goes with these contracts.
His game is far more
scalable, 100%. He's a great shooter.
Yes.
Will the contract be as ugly as the Westbrook contract? Probably not.
God, no.
But you know, when you have a guy on that roster, he already has a max contract because he earned it when he was 22 or whatever. When you earned that rookie extension, so now you got to continue to pay him, right? Unless you've already offered him the max. If you offer him less than the max, he's walking. So you give it to him anyway, right? You keep those franchise guys around. So I think Draymond's price tag was less about. It was the price tag isn't so much like how much are we going to pay Draymond? It's how much should we pay Draymond? Obviously, if they're going to bring him back, he's going to come back on the max. And I think the decision comes down to like, can Kuminga step in and be a Draymond type player? Can Wiggins step in and be that Draymond that we need, right? So I think it's some of those young guys who are coming up. Maybe they can really swing it around and do something like they had D'Angelo Russell and they did like a sign and trade for Kevin Durant and they got D'Lo and then they flipped D'Lo for Wiggins, right? Maybe they can do something like that where they figure out a way to move Draymond for someone who can fill in, like a Dorian Finney-Smith or something like that. But
yeah, and I mean, I guess I look at this too, and I think how many teams realistically are out there who are going to be like, I'm going to give Draymond big money. And so I think the ball is still kind of in the Warriors' court in that regard because I don't know that he is going to command the money that he wants anywhere else. So the Warriors probably have that advantage, just that he doesn't want to leave either. So we'll see.
I think there are teams out there who are willing to give Draymond Green a max contract just to eat up cap space. You have to pay a minimum amount on your salary, right? And it's like $70 million or something like that. So you look at teams like the Detroit Pistons who paid Mason Plumlee like $12 million a year. And they did that because like they needed to put money on the books, right? So they can't just have like all these rookie extensions. And
I've heard that rumor. I've heard for whatever reason today, Stephen A. Smith was saying the Lakers, which I don't fully understand.
I don't fully understand that either. But I mean, I think there are a lot of teams. There are a lot of really bad teams who are like, we need to pay someone, right? And as long as we're not over the luxury tax, we might as well just pay him the $35 million he is worth, like the max contract we can give him.
And I do. Like, I don't mean to totally discredit him. Like, I do think he contributes to winning. I think we have seen year in, year out that he clearly has, I don't want to say attitude issues is probably the wrong way of putting it, but he's
an intense person.
He is, I mean, obviously punching Jordan Poole, kicking LeBron, like kicking Steven Adams, like all these things he has shown over years that he has had an inability to kind of stay level-headed, which has impeded the team's ability to win games.
Like on the Rockets, I wouldn't put him in there knowing already that Kevin Porter Jr. has issues, and I have a bunch of young guys who I feel are a little more.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's obviously something teams are going to need to contemplate before you do actually go commit to this guy.
But there are teams that are selling teams that have a couple guys on the roster who are like, fuck it, let's just pay Draymond.
I mean, I don't know.
It'll happen.
I think it'll happen too. I think if, let's say, for example, I'm trying to think of teams off the top of my head, might not necessarily have the money, but he'd be a great fit on Phoenix. I think they need a guy like him. He'd be a great fit on the Miami Heat. I think he'd be, I think there are all these teams where
I could see him being in like Indiana, right? Indiana's like, oh, we have the fourth draft pick this year. We draft someone who would fit well next to a Draymond Green. We sign Draymond to his max. We have a bunch of rookie guys on the team. We let Buddy Hield walk. We let Miles Turner walk. And Draymond Green helps you find rhythm on the court. Because he can do it with Curry. He can do it with other guys.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be weird. But I am curious, though, your thoughts to kind of bring I know we just went on a Draymond tangent, but I also want to look at the Warriors now this season, too. Where do we think, or what do we think this drama now does to their championship hopes? I don't think it does. I don't think it does as much as it does to the Celtics. Their drama is worse.
The Celtics drama is definitely worse, especially because it's top down from your coach, right? I think if Steve Kerr was in some type of scandal, I think it would put a whole thing over the Warriors roster. I think if Curry was in some type of scandal, or like Tatum or someone like that was in a scandal, it would pretty much put a season over. But obviously it sucks losing a leader like that, but there's so many really great players on the Warriors, and I think they have a culture that they've built there that I just don't see them missing a beat. So
I think it's weirdly, because Draymond, I think, understands that he's going to need to come in and be apologetic. I know he has apologized. He did like the press conference too, but I think it's really going to land now on Jordan Poole to be forgiving and be willing to accept this guy back into the locker room. And I mean, I'm sure obviously he probably is going to ultimately do that. I think that, the guys in that locker room have done a good job of like bridging gaps of different fights and things before. We've seen them kind of do it with Kevin Durant. I just think that there has been enough of that where they have been able to get through it. That said, though, what I've been hearing about Jordan Poole in all of this hasn't been great either. It seems like he's kind of gotten a chip on his shoulder a little bit. So we'll see.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to affect their season. It might affect being able to bring Jordan Poole back. Like, hey, my teammate here punched me in my face and I don't feel the organization respected me enough.
Maybe now, let's say the writing on the wall there for the Warriors, though, is that he's going to walk in the offseason. Do you let him? Trade him at the deadline? What do you do?
Obviously, you don't want to let him walk, and you want to keep him. I think it was us as a team messed up. The organization, the general manager, the president of basketball operations, whoever it is like, okay, I made a mistake. Then you trade him at the deadline. But I still feel there's a way for this relationship to be repaired.
Right.
Obviously, Jordan Poole, there's a lot of guys in the locker room. Obviously, Jordan Poole has other friends that he looks up to and hangs out with. So I'd give it some time. I wouldn't trade him at the deadline, especially because he can be integral to you making a playoff push and a championship run. So I wouldn't trade him. And if I lose him in the offseason, that's really unfortunate. But if you look at what they do each offseason, I feel like they seem to reload no matter what. So
right.
They have Dante DiVincenzo, who I feel can do a lot of the same stuff, maybe not as stop and go quick, but still a great shooter, good playmaker. Yeah. It was unfortunate the Bucks let him go for Serge Ibaka.
Yeah, it was a weird trade, but go figure. Teams do some weird things. But yeah, no, I agree. I think the Warriors probably are going to be fine. I do think it really does depend. I think this next 2-week window is very important for them. It might be the most important 2 weeks of the whole season until the playoffs. Because if they don't really nip this issue in the bud, it's going to follow them, and it's really going to put a sour taste in people's mouths. That locker room could get pretty caught up in it pretty quickly, and you don't want people picking sides and that sort of thing. It could get ugly. Sure. But I still do. I agree with you. Don't think it's as bad as the Celtics. I think they can get through it. But we were just talking about the deadline, so let's get to the good stuff. Let's get to Victor and what the heck that's going to mean for the rest of the league all season. Because he played 2 games, and people are already talking about how you need to shut this 17-year-old down for a year because he's going to go number 1 overall no matter what.
I liked how his agent did a lot of speaking during the second game, and then and he was like, look, you can try and shut him down. It won't happen. He's going to be out there. He's going to play. You can tell him to stop playing. And that would put my career at risk, because if I tell him to stop playing, then what type of trust issues do I create there? So that to me sounds really great. I had big problems with Shaedon Sharpe being drafted 7th overall after deciding not to play at University of Kentucky. I think
we'll see how that looks, though. We don't know how that's going to look. But
I don't know how it's going to look, but it doesn't set the tone off, right? When I played football as a kid, the coaches would always tell you, make sure when you take your first step is forward.
Right.
Right. And here's Shaedon Sharpe. I'm not going to play at Kentucky. That's not taking a first step forward.
No.
In my opinion.
And right. And so that's the interesting thing that I've heard about Victor is through whatever it is, whether it's basketball,
he just likes to play.
Whether it's another sport, whether it's I was listening to Brian Woodhorse's podcast, The Hoop Collective. They were talking about this. Apparently throughout this process, they've been interviewing him and whatnot. But whether it's solving a Rubik's Cube, he just likes to compete, and he will be the first one to do it. If he's playing you in chess, he will not try and lose. He'll try and get better at it. And also, he's kind of like a virtuoso. Like, he just is good at everything inherently. And so there's something about him.
That's what I want to hear, right? Like,
and there's something about him that apparently everyone who has come into contact with him is like, oh my God, he's it. He's the one, which is why now he has become this larger than life prospect. Honestly, I saw Richard Jefferson say that LeBron would get picked after him, which I don't think anyone really actually believes, but he is as big of a prospect as LeBron was. I don't think there's been a bigger prospect than him since then.
Yeah, obviously, he's like Kevin Durant on offense and Rudy Gobert on defense, which is insane. I think there was a lot of hype. There's a lot of hype around Victor right now, and I think a lot of that is from the fact that we're all so well connected on the internet and yada yada yada.
Right.
I think definitely helps. What was special about LeBron was LeBron did it before the internet was really established. There was no YouTube. There was no hoop mixtapes on YouTube. There was no right. It's not like the Ball brothers. Like, you had to go watch LeBron play. You had to go turn on the TV. The fact that LeBron got this little tiny Catholic school from Akron, Ohio, to be placed on national television means a lot. The fact that he was the first high school player to be on Sports Illustrated means a lot, right? So it's hard to compare.
Right. And that's why I'm not saying because it's obviously, I know what that meant and what he became, but
you'd also have to think about it. Like, in my opinion, from what we've seen of Victor, and kind of like the expectations now, I can kind of put him into, I can kind of understand where he fits amongst like the prospect pool. I know that he played against the USA U19 team last year, which had like Chet, Jaden Ivey, who was drafted 4th.
Well, and that's another thing that I think is a lot of people were trying originally to compare him to Chet just because they played each other in that game.
You can't even compare them anymore.
They don't seem like the same player at all.
Not at all. I think
Chet seems far more fragile than Victor does. It's so interesting.
The fragility.
Chet reminds me far more of a Kristaps than he does of a Durant.
Yeah, Chet's more of a big. Wembanyama seems much more like a forward. Seeing him put it on the floor, like hezzy pull-ups and all that stuff, he seems so much more skilled than Chet. And when they played, Wembanyama won that matchup. They both played center. Right. Wembanyama had like 8 blocks in the championship game when France faced off against the U.S. So I think the most surprising thing about me was like, okay, he's going to come in here. He's going to play against this G League team. There's a lot of other really good players. They have the number 2 prospect in Scoot Henderson, who got way overshadowed by Victor.
And that I do want to get to in a second too, but keep going.
And I was like, okay, he'll score like 20 points.
Right.
The fact that he scored 37 in the first one and 36 in the second one.
Among other like significant accolades. Yeah.
Insane. Yeah. He had like 5 blocks in both games. He had a double-double in the second game.
He had like what?
It was just ridiculous.
Yeah, he had like 7 threes in the one. Yeah, crazy.
Some of the shots he hits too. Okay. And it's not like he hits 7 threes. It's not like he's coming down in transition, last guy, and they throw it back to him and he just shoots it over the top. It's not like that. He's like, he's coming off screens. He's like shooting fadeaways. He's pulling up from 35. Yeah, no, it's ridiculous.
But that's why, and he's only 17. Like, it's just, I really think it's going to revolutionize the way teams approach this season. Those 2 games alone, I mean, I forget what it was. Some NBA insider was saying that drafting him would make your team an additional 5. It would increase your team's value by $500 million. Just drafting him.
Just drafting him, which is insane. I mean,
but how does it not? You would watch him. I would watch him if he wasn't even on my team every night if I could. There was something about watching those games where you could not help but gravitate to staring at him at everything he's doing. It was magical.
Yeah, no. Obviously, when you draft him, he's going to draw a lot of attention within the U.S. markets. But then I also think because he's an international player, you have to think about populations in other places around the world that would watch him. Right? So obviously he's French. You get a lot of French people tuning into NBA games now. I don't think he's like heritage French. Obviously,
I don't really know his background.
I'm going to say he's some type of, like, France has a whole bunch of African colonies. I'm sure he's got fans somewhere in Africa. Right? So you got people all over the world tuning in to watch him. Now he's in the NBA. You draft him on your team. You're selling jerseys across the world. You're selling jerseys in the U.S. You're selling tickets. People want to come watch him play in the stadium. So you'd expect it to change your franchise. And so
I mean, he would. It seems like he absolutely would. And that's why
sure we'd have the same conversation about like LeBron. You know, what was Zion's financial impact on the Pelicans when they drafted him?
I mean, I'm sure it was huge, but
huge, right?
Again, though, I want to dial this back because I feel like, and again, you hit the nail on the head here. The way we're so interconnected with social media and the internet, everything. We've known about this kid for what, 2 years now?
2 years, yeah.
And he still has a year to go before he's even drafted. Like, we didn't really have that with Zion. Sure, we saw like a high school highlight where like the small kids like trying to box him out.
But I knew Zion for a long, long time. I knew Zion for 2 years before he even went to Duke.
But he wasn't even like, it's not like he was like this number one prospect coming out of high school. It was like, oh, it's a super athletic kid. We didn't know what he was going to be.
He went to a small high school,
right?
And he wasn't the number one recruit until his senior year.
Yeah,
and he had already committed to Duke by that point. He was the number 2 recruit after
the fact that we're even putting him in the conversation of what Zion was as a prospect and LeBron. Like, I think in the last 20 years, has there been anyone else in that upper echelon of, oh, I gotta be the first pick to get him. I gotta be the first pick to get him. No, it really hasn't.
I think there was a lot of hype around Andrew Wiggins. Obviously, he didn't really meet those expectations once he got to the league, and I think a lot of us forgot about the massive hype around him. But
yeah.
He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, I believe, as well. Mm-hmm. Rated the most entertaining high school player to watch in the nation. Number 1 prospect, went to Kansas. There's a lot of hype. He scored like 20 points a game.
You know what's
he was a solid first pick.
What's funny too about all of this, and you brought him up, and I think it's interesting because we're obviously talking about these overhyped number 1 prospects, everything. We have 2 of those in this draft. I think if Scoot Henderson wasn't being overshadowed by Victor,
he could be number 1 pick.
He would be. You would tank for Scoot. Undeniably, he looked that good. He put up 36 in that game, in that first game that Victor had 37. And then he got hurt in the second game, so kind of hard to evaluate there. But yeah. He had an exceptional game, and his team won. He led them over Victor, but no one's talking about him. No one's talking about him, which is why like it's all like, yes, you're tanking for Victor. If you end up with the second pick, like, you're going to get a guy who I think he would have been the first round. I think he would have been first overall last season.
Yeah,
he's going to be one of these incredible point guards. I'm seeing people comparing him to like what Derrick Rose was before he got hurt.
No,
I think he's a better shooter, frankly. But
yeah, I mean, the highlights that I saw from him, he looked very athletic. He was getting up. He was hitting tough, contested, body contorting layups. He did have one really nice shot over Victor.
Right.
So it doesn't seem like he lacks any type of confidence, which is great.
I do think, though, to your point that you were making before, though, it is wild that he was playing that well. He had 36 points in a win, and like no one's talking about him after the fact. Yeah. All of the attention is about how like truly one of a kind Chet is.
I know. Throughout the course of our recording history, it's well documented that I hate small guards.
I know.
So Scoot Henderson at 6'2" would never be my first pick.
He doesn't do it for you? No.
That's just I want to draft a 6'8" forward so bad.
He looked so good. I can't believe you're saying that.
I would be ecstatic for him to be the second best player on my team.
He could be a number 1.
I think, yeah, just like Damian Lillard.
Well, I can't jump to conclusions. Again, you kids, we don't know what they're going to look like in the NBA. But
if he had a growth spurt,
if you lose the lottery and get the second pick,
Scoot's got to be the second pick.
Yeah, automatic.
I think last year there was a big question mark about 1, 2, 3: Jabari Smith, Paolo, and Chet. And the whole year we argued it. Right at the beginning of the year, we were all like, "It's Chet, it's Chet, it's Chet." And then leading up into the draft, everybody was like, "It's going to be Jabari Smith. He had an unreal season at Auburn, blah, 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 blah." And then, even when it was Chet and even when it was Jabari, there was always like, but what about Paolo, right? Like, how come we're not considering Paolo to be the number 1 pick? And then obviously he was, but there was always a question mark between 1 and 3. I think this year it's very, very, very clear. Victor Wembanyama is going to be first. Scoot Henderson is going to be second. And then everything else is...
Draft starts at 3.
Right. Yeah. So if I get the second pick, I want to be the Orlando Magic. I want to be the Houston Rockets. I want to be because if I draft Scoot Henderson with the second pick, I already want an established forward playmaker on my team. I think Scoot's going to be really, really great. if he has the opportunity to play again with Apollo, with a Jabari Smith, with a Chet Holmgren, right? So,
I mean, I don't know. I think you stick him on the Spurs, he'd be fine in a good system with good coaches that's like generally had a stable floor. Yeah, I think he'd be fine. I think as long as it's not like the Jazz, I think it's probably okay.
When I think about a top 3 pick, I want to draft a guy who's going to win me a championship, right? Someone, even with no help, can win a championship, possibly win a championship, right? When we talk about a top 3 pick, I want to think about the Michael Jordans, the LeBrons, the Kobe Bryants, the Giannis's, right? Like
that's just not how it works.
That's who I want to draft. I want to draft the guy who has that potential with the top 3 pick.
In theory, you want to draft them, but also the guys you just named, like other than LeBron and Jordan, none of them were top 3 picks.
No, Kobe was 13. Giannis was 15.
Right, that's what I mean.
But yeah, they were unknown prospects.
Theoretically,
Kobe coming out of high school, you're not going to draft a high school player in the top 3.
LeBron. I'm just saying. My point being, and how many of these guys who can truly win you a championship were taken in the top 3? They're few and far between, oddly enough. Like, even look at Steph Curry wasn't in there. You look at, I mean, KD obviously was.
I also think the philosophy changed a little bit. So, like, we talk about guys who are winning championships today, like Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard, when he got drafted, would have never been considered for a top 3 pick. And that's just because he's a 6'7" power forward who doesn't really shoot, right? And then obviously throughout time, he became a better playmaker, a better shooter, a better defender. He obviously was early on benefited from the Greg Popovich system. And now that he's had his own space, he's shown that he can do a lot more than just play in the Popovich system. But, when you think about like top 3 picks in that era, like even Kevin Durant got picked second to Greg Oden, and that's just because like people like Embiid were a much more attractive pick back in the early 2000s into 2010. So
I mean, also injuries aside, we have no idea what Greg Oden could have been. I think that
Greg Oden could have been ridiculous,
right? So I think that was actually closer to a consensus than.
But he also could have been like DeAndre Ayton, right? Like why would you draft DeAndre Ayton first when Luka Doncic is sitting on the board?
Well, yeah, I'll add him 5th pick. Or whatever.
Third pick, traded down.
Yeah. Okay.
Hawks picked him 3rd, traded for the 5th pick.
Got it. That's what it was. Anyway, so he did finish top 3, but whatever.
Those who you draft. Cade Cunningham. That's who you draft the top 3 picks.
So then let's now discuss this. Obviously, you want to end up at the top of this lottery. What do we think this is going to do? I know we did kind of our segment on how there's only a few teams towards the bottom who are legitimately tanking from the get-go. How far into the season before other teams start to be like, you know what? We're heading to the bottom. We're all aboard the Tank Express.
So a couple of teams I already mentioned, Orlando Magic. I think they're going to be bad, but I don't think they should not purposefully tank. They shouldn't trade away people to get that first pick. They should just play their game and see where they fall in the lottery.
Yeah, same thing with Houston Rockets. They're also just going to lose a lot of games anyway.
That's what I mean. Like, you have a good chance if you just play your game.
I mean, honestly, looking at this roster, like, you could trade away, like, they're going to trade away, I guarantee you, a Terrence Ross. They're going to trade away a Gary Harris.
For the right price, Gary Harris has a huge contract. I don't think anybody wants him.
Yeah, but if you if you're just selling to try and ultimately have your best shot at getting one of these 2 guys, I'm not saying it's automatic. I think Terrence Ross is a goner. Like, there's no way he's going to be on that roster at the end of the season.
Yeah. But like Orlando Magic, Houston Rockets, Oklahoma City Thunder,
right.
I don't think those teams should make any changes to their roster. Hold on to what you have for the future. You're going to get a high draft pick. Whether or not you land Victor or Scoot won't be a big deal because you already have established guys like Paulo, Jabari Smith, right? You want to invest in those guys now that you've already selected them.
And all of those teams, I think we agree, are going to be towards the bottom no matter what. Just from the jump, they are.
Teams
this year is weird, though, where there aren't that many teams who were predetermined being like, we're going to be in the lottery, we're going to be competing to lose. Like, there weren't that many. There were so many.
There are 2 teams that should sell to be that first pick. San Antonio Spurs, trade anybody over 25. Jakob Poeltl, gotta go. Josh Richardson, gotta go.
I think even with them, they're going to do that.
Keldon Johnson, gotta go.
Fine. And who's your other?
And the Utah Jazz. Obviously, they've made a lot of trades. Traded Gobert, traded Mitchell, traded Bogdanovich.
No,
now it comes down to Conley has to go. Clarkson has to go.
Yes.
Right, because I
understand. It looks like I mean, did you see they just waived Saban Lee, or however you say his name, Saban Lee, who they got from the Pistons in the Bogdanovich trade? They basically just traded Bogdanovich for Kelly Olynyk straight up. Like, that is a tanking trade.
It is a tanking trade. But, I mean, who are you going to cut, Saban Lee or Jordan Clarkson? Right? Jordan Clarkson has a lot of value. You're not going to cut him because you want to make a trade. So I think when we think about the trade deadline, we'll see a lot of movers.
I think it's going to be more fascinating. Teams who are at the precipice of making the play-in. What do they do? Because normally you would wait until the deadline and you would either commit to trying getting into the playoffs, or you would just say, "Hey, writing's on the wall. We're going the other way."
I mean,
I think that decision is going to have to come a lot sooner than the deadline this year. I think we're going to see in December at that deadline where players sign contracts in the offseason. That's going to be the new trade deadline. Because teams at that point, if you're, I don't know, let's say you're 5-14 to start the year as like let's say
you're the Portland Trailblazers. You're not a top 6 team in the West. We can agree on that.
Yeah,
they're a play-in team. And
the problem is their organization has not shown any signs of being like, we're giving up.
But if you really think about a team that should be selling everything to try and get that first overall pick, that is a pristine example of one.
Yes.
But they won't, right?
Fine.
There are 2 teams in the West that will really tank, and that's the Jazz and the Spurs. And if the only reason you should try and tank is if you think you can be worse than the Jazz or the Spurs, which just at the beginning of the year, if you have any player who has a chance of being an all-star on your roster, it's already too late for you.
See, and that's the thing. Like, I look at the West and I don't necessarily see those teams that are going to be like trading off assets outside of those bottom ones that we talked about, Houston, Utah, Spurs.
Yeah.
I don't really think there's anyone realistically, OKC maybe, but they don't really even have much to trade at this point. If they want to get rid of Shea, which is a whole other conversation.
Did they get rid of Shea though?
That's again, a whole other conversation. Do you do it? But so beyond those teams, I don't see it happening. I more look at the Eastern Conference. I think you're going to see a lot of teams. Like, I think you're going to see someone like, obviously Indiana's going to be towards the bottom. You're going to have Detroit, who's kind of towards the bottom. A team like Washington.
Detroit's not going to. A team like Washington could 100%. But Beal just signed that huge extension. Who's going to trade for him? Are you going to take a Russell Westbrook contract? Because Russell Westbrook's going to win you games.
I just think you're also going to see teams that do see the writing on the wall. And they're just like, you know what? It's not happening. You're going to have a team like, and I know actually this one is particularly interesting, so it can't happen, but it was one that I thought, maybe it does. The Bulls, but they don't have their pick this year. So they're not going to end up doing that. They're going to commit to trying to win. But I think that does open up a window for a team like Charlotte. Does Charlotte say, hey, we're tanking? We're outright tanking. We have LaMelo already, but he's not good enough.
I think.
Do you try and trade Gordon Hayward somewhere? Do you try and do whatever? Like,
yeah,
they're probably realistically not making the playoffs or even the play-in.
They could. I think. Yeah, they're not. So a great
did
team.
they? Let's say they have a slow start to their season, considering they don't have a power forward.
This is the problem. This is the problem with the Hornets. Are you going to be worse than the Jazz? Are you going to be worse than the Spurs?
But that's the thing. You don't have to be with the flying lottery odds. You don't have to be worse.
No, because if you fall outside that top 3, it's going to be really, really, really hard.
I understand that, but I'm just saying, let's go. I'm going to go years past now.
Are you worse than the Pacers? Just by having LaMelo Ball on the roster, the only way they should try and get rid of everybody, I think no matter what, you try and trade Hayward, he doesn't fit your timeline. The only reason they should try and trade more than Hayward is if LaMelo breaks his knee out for the year, shut him down right there and then. Same thing with the Hawks. If Trae Young has a minor injury, shut him down the whole year, right? Trade John Collins.
Yeah.
Right? But
again, though, that's so
if Trae Young gets hurt, if LaMelo gets hurt, right? But those are the only reasons.
I'm going back now.
So ass.
I'm going back now, and I'm looking at just past drafts. The team that was supposed to have the number 1 overall pick hasn't gotten it since.
But
since the Suns got DeAndre Ayton in 2018, and that correct me if I'm wrong. That is pre-flattened odds. So
who got the number 1 pick?
The Suns did that year, 2018.
No. 2019, 2020, 21.
Okay.
22.
So 2019 is Zion. That's the Pelicans jumped 6 spots. The Grizzlies jumped 6 spots to get the 2. That's the first year you had the flattened odds. The Knicks dropped 2 spots for the 3 pick. Then the 4, the Lakers actually jumped 7 spots and the Hawks got their pick. They traded it to the Hawks. The Lakers jumped 7 spots. So the top 4 picks were all huge swings.
And after that?
2020, you had the Timberwolves jump 2 spots and got the number 1.
So they were the 3rd worst team.
Yeah. They jumped 2 spots. Then you had the Warriors dropped 1 spot to the 2nd pick. The Hornets jumped 5 spots to the 3. The Bulls jumped 3 spots to get the 4. So again, you just have teams dropping. Like it's not a foregone conclusion that if you're in that top window, you're going to get it. 2021, you had the Pistons move up 1, the Rockets move down 1 for 1 and 2. 3rd pick, you had Cleveland move up 2 spots. They got Evan Mobley. You had the Raptors move up 3 to get the 4th pick.
What it seems like, though, is you need to be a top 3 worst team. You need to be in the bottom 3.
As long as you're somewhere in the top 6, you have a shot. You have a shot. I think that's all that really realistically matters.
You tank this season. You trade away any good players that you have. If you're the Hornets, LaMelo gets hurt. You trade away Hayward. You trade away PJ Washington. You trade away anybody who might make your team slightly decent, and you get the 5th pick. What do? You fall 3 spots in the lottery. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, it is a gamble, but I still think, what is the opportunity cost? Would you rather have the 5th pick in this draft, or would you rather be in no man's land with the 10? What would you rather have? And I think all teams would agree in this lost season for them, where they're no longer have Miles Bridges. They really don't have prospects of getting better. What are you doing? You're in no man's land. I think they are a prime team where you're going to see they're going to have to make a decision. They're going to have to make one early about what they do.
I think if LaMelo plays 70 games, there's no chance. And if he's not hurt, he's going to play 70 games.
All right. And you can't win a ton of games with just LaMelo. It's the same reason we're looking at the Thunder. The same way we're looking at the Thunder and saying they're not going to win a ton of games. And I could even argue that the Thunder are better than the Hornets. I'm not saying that for sure, but I'm just saying, I think, obviously, assuming if Chet were in the mix, but you have guys like SGA, Dort, you have good pieces.
Yeah, you have SGA. They're very similar teams. I think if Chet was in, you could make the case that OKC is better than.
Again, though, my point that we're already talking about how the Thunder are going to be in this conversation. Why would the Hornets not try and drop a little bit to be there? Organizationally, from a front office perspective, it makes so much sense to at least give yourself heightened odds. If you're in the top 5, no matter what, if you're in the top 5, you have at least a 10.5% chance of getting that number 1.
There's a balance. You can't trade away too much, and I think that the Hornets have too much on their roster. They have to give up too much to try and go for 1 and 2. And if they get to, you're going to play Scoot Henderson and LaMelo Ball next to each other.
Yeah,
they need that first pick, and it's just not a risk I'm willing to take because I already know there's already 3 teams worse than me. If I can't be a bottom 3 team, I won't do it.
So, all right, fine. You disagree. I look at it, and I think that is realistically possibilities. You're going to have these no man's land teams either commit one way or another. They're either going to be huge buyers or huge sellers because you don't want to be stuck, especially not in this draft. Justifying to your fan base when you have the 10th pick or the 11th pick is going to be hard. Yeah. It's going to be hard. Because you didn't pick a lane.
I think there's going to be a lot of prospects that fill in underneath the top 2 guys.
Sure, of course, as the college season starts and whatnot.
Let's say I'm the Hornets and I'm bad this year and I get the 8th pick. I could find a serviceable forward to replace Miles Bridges.
Sure.
While I still have LaMelo under contract.
Let's flip it, though. Let's now look at the top of the NBA. What does their deadline look like? Because let's say, for argument's sake, you do have a lot of teams that are like, you know what? We just want to get off, guys. We just want to get off, guys. We just want to lose some games. So you're not going to have to trade as much to get these solid rotation pieces.
Yeah, the prices on, if you're the Utah Jazz, the price on Jordan Clarkson just dropped. The price on
100%.
Mike Conley just dropped. You're not going to get, the Spurs are trying to trade Pirtle for 2 first-round picks. You're not going to get that anymore.
No way.
Because teams are going to look at you and be like, we know who's being drafted first, right? Like, we're not going to give you what you want.
But that's also why, and again, this is a nuanced example, but I think the Lakers are smart for not trading Russ in 2 picks yet. Because I think you hold Russ into the season, some team is going to be like, hell yeah, give me a pick and Russell Westbrook for the remainder of the season. We'll be bad. And then he's not on our team anymore next season. Like, I think you're going to have so many teams make these. And in that same transaction, to give us a pick in Westbrook, they're also going to be like, take all of our good players. We don't want to win. I think the
Pacers are really smart. They should go to the Lakers and say, we'll take Westbrook, the 2 firsts for Hield and Turner. And the Lakers need it. They don't have a starting center, and they need
the 2 firsts is the problem, though. Because I don't think teams are going to have as much leverage saying, give us your 2 firsts. Because you know what? They don't want to win. You don't want to have Hield and Turner on your roster if you're the Pacers.
Make them protected firsts then. I know they wanted 2 unprotected first. Make them top 5 protected. And I think if I'm the Pacers, I think if any Russell Westbrook trade is made, he gets bought out.
Yeah.
Immediately. He plays no games for his new team.
Exactly. It's exactly what would happen.
So, but you have to be a team that has the cap space, and you have to be a team that is willing to buy him out.
You need to have but it's 1 season. It's 1 season. So you're paying him no matter what. And it's not like you stretch it. You have that cap hit on your books this season.
You don't know. Maybe you say to him, hey, let's reach a buyout. And he's like, no.
Fine. Then go home. You do what they did with John Wall and the Rockets. Go home.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
He won't play. Yeah, I mean, obviously that's what you do, but it's unfortunate the Rockets had to pay John Wall anyway.
But that's the thing. A buyout, what's the difference? You're still going to pay 80% of the salary.
Yeah.
So like obviously that does sting when it's millions of dollars and not whatever we make, but it's still, that's how I view it. And I'm just like, I think these teams are going to get, again, I brought up Terrence Ross before. I know it's not the best example, but a team is going to be like, here, take Terrence Ross for nothing so we can be a little worse. Like we'll take 2 second round picks for Terrence Ross. Like,
yeah, I think Terrence Ross gets moved for the right price. If I'm the Orlando Magic, I don't trade anybody because I know the Pacers are going to be worse than me. I know the Wizards are going to be worse than me. I know the Spurs are going to be worse than me. I know the Jazz are going to be worse than me, right? And just by being the 5th worst team, I'm already pretty much out of the running of having the first pick.
Maybe, but you're not with the flattened odds. You're just not. But again, I'm going to get into another team. Let's look at the Pistons, who I know we're both high on, and we think they're going to win more games than they normally do.
I just can't see the Pistons doing it because they've now.
Why would they not trade the likes of Alec Burks, Nerlens Noel, I don't know, Corey Joseph? They
bought into Cade. They're trying to build around Cade.
They're going to be bad anyway.
I'm just saying, make the play-in. That's like, because what are they really missing? Like a Jalen, they have everything on their roster.
They're not going to
make Jalen Durant. They have. You don't think they're going to make the play-in?
They're too young and inexperienced. They're not going to make. They're going to make so many mistakes.
You never know. Cade Cunningham could be exceptional this year. If Cade Cunningham is an all-star, they're a playing team easy.
Okay, I don't know about that.
I don't know about that either. But
I agree. Like it does give them a leg up, but I don't think that's a guarantee.
Is it really great that you can draft a Victor Wembanyama? Yeah, but in 4 years, when you have to pay everybody, who are you leaving out? Right.
Well, I think that's kind of the issue that the Cavs are going to have. Not to this kind of coming.
Look at what happened at the Oklahoma City Thunder with Harden, Durant, and Westbrook all on the same team, and Ibaka, and they had to choose.
Everyone wanted their opportunity. That was kind of the other thing. Like Harden wanted more, and so they were like, "Fine, we'll trade you."
You can't pay everybody. That's the problem, right? And so if I'm the Pistons and I'm looking at my roster right now, I'm going to have to pay Ivy at some point. I have to pay Cade at some point. I have to pay Durant at some point. I have Sadiq Bey.
But that's if everything goes right. It's not a guarantee that everything's going to go right.
I think if you stick with what you have, build continuity, pay your guys.
If you land Victor, if you land Victor, and you have all those guys,
what happens if you?
I literally don't even care who I have to trade because then you trade some of those guys for like vet players to go with your younger guys.
Let's say you draft Victor, he tears his ACL in the 13th game of the year, comes back and he's just not the same. If I'm the Detroit Pistons, do I run that risk? Look at my team. I already have a team. I have a young team. Let's just build with it. Let's be a highly competitive playoff team in 3 years.
I mean,
They have a core. They drafted their core, the Pistons. They just got.
But imagine how much better that core is if you get one of those two guys.
And I also think they have an exceptional developmental coach with Dwayne Casey.
I agree.
They're not going to miss with those picks just because Dwayne Casey will turn them into something. The Pistons will be the Raptors when they won it with Kawhi. And if they can keep their superstar Cade Cunningham on the roster, why can't they?
But here's how I look at it. I agree. They are still going to play a ton of minutes and get a ton of experience this year, regardless of who's playing next to them.
I'm not thinking about this year when I drafted Wembanyama. I'm thinking about 7 years from now.
Right. But that's my point. If you're the Pistons and you have Cade, Ivy, and Victor.
I can't. I can afford two. I can afford 2 max contracts.
You can afford 3. Teams pay 3 guys. Look at the Lakers. I know it's a bad example, but you can.
Terrible example.
But you can pay 3, and if they're actually complementary pieces, it works. Like, it can work. And you also never know. Someone could be like a Tim Duncan and take a little less. You never know what's going to happen. Look at the Warriors. The Warriors have paid Warriors have paid a ton of guys. Wiggins is a max deal. Steph is a max deal. Clay's getting one. Draymond's getting some money. Like, you're paying guys a ton of money on that team. Like, you can make it work.
There are teams that have bought into a core that won't tank. And I think the Detroit Pistons are one of them.
I think those 2 games that Victor played and then an early stint of losing can easily change a front office's mind. I do. Because I think with these odds, where I'm looking at them right now, where if let's say you're somewhere in the top 5, bottom 5, you are guaranteed at least a 10.5% chance of getting the first pick and then 10.5% of getting the second. So you ultimately up to 20% chance of getting one of those 2 guys. I like those odds compared to if I fall towards the bottom and I have a 3%.
So if I'm the Pistons, I tank for the first pick. I get the second pick. I draft Scoot Henderson. What's my lineup?
Who cares?
Guard.
Yeah. Figure it out. You literally figure it out.
Nah. I committed to a core. When the Pistons drafted Cade and they drafted Ivy and they drafted Duren, they've committed. They had a future. They had a plan. Here's our 5-year plan. And they're going to put that plan into motion.
I have one more theoretical for you because I know we're starting to hit the hour mark, so I don't want to hold this too long, but I have one more theoretical. Let's say the Thunder don't get the first pick, but they have 24 picks or something in the next few drafts. SGA and 8 unprotected first-round picks. Would you trade the Victor pick for that?
Who got the first pick?
I don't know, but think of it. They theoretically could offer that.
If I'm the Orlando Magic and I got the first pick.
Okay.
SGA and Paulo, do it. If I'm the Houston Rockets and I got the first pick, 100%. 100%.
Okay, let me bring it down. Let me say 6 picks, unprotected.
Still, 100%.
Yeah.
If I get the right 6 picks and SGA.
You could say I do want some of them to be Thunder picks. So you could mix and match with all the ones they have. Clipper picks, maybe later Clipper picks. You could say I want some of those. You could say I want, theoretically, what is
the right package?
Where does this come in? Where they're like, we have everything we want.
If I'm the Sacramento Kings and I got the first pick, no,
no,
because my franchise is a poverty franchise, and Victor Wembanyama is the only chance I have of being something. I'm not doing that deal.
What about Indiana?
I'm not doing that deal if I'm Indiana.
Yeah,
they don't have anything.
Is that?
They don't have anything.
How insane is that? That you could get offered 6 unprotected first-round picks, and for just a guy who hasn't even played in the NBA yet.
But who am I building around if I'm the Indiana Pacers right now? I'm still kind of stuck in no man's land. I know I have Haliburton. I know I just drafted Mathurin, but how much do I put in Mathurin? And I know Haliburton's been really good, but is he Is he the best player on a championship team?
With Shea, I don't know. It would be. I do think putting those 2 players on a court together is appealing. I think then you're in a position where you could say, okay, now we have whatever my dumb example is, 6 to 8 first-round picks. We could then trade for a 3rd star. Maybe that's even your first star. Maybe that's your number 1. But it at least gives you a little more leeway.
Yeah, maybe I draft someone with those 6 picks or 8 picks or whatever I get. But Haliburton, SGA, and 6 picks, sure, but I don't know. Haliburton and Wembanyama seems a lot more.
I'm just fascinated by this idea that suddenly Presti's Hall proves valuable, because we've always kind of been sitting here waiting and being like, when is it going to happen?
other teams have it. If you're the Utah Jazz with all those picks and you have the second pick, would you trade this year's second, like literally every first round pick you have, and I don't know, whoever, like what package would you put together for the first?
It begs the question, would you do it?
It's doable.
Like the other one team with a ton of picks, the Pelicans have a ton of picks.
Not the Pelicans, I don't do it, and that's just because I've committed to Zion, Brandon Ingram.
Right, but think about it. Zion basically plays on the inside anyway. You're going to have... I just think putting Victor on the outside and letting Zion eat up the paint.
It really... You have to decide what's Zion's window. Is it better to stick with Brandon Ingram, or can I wait a little while for Wembanyama to come into his own and be a Brandon Ingram or a Kevin Durant, right? So,
or it's the perfect succession plan for when Ingram phases out of being a Pelican and then he gets good enough where he takes over.
Yeah, maybe you draft him like a Kawhi, but
I'm not saying I think this is going to happen. I'm just saying for argument's sake. And then obviously the last team, which I don't think will ever happen in a million years, is the Knicks with all their picks. I just think you look at these teams that have these treasure troves of picks where you just say,
the Knicks don't have the same treasure trove as some of these other teams.
Here is everything. Here's everything we have. Here's the key to the city. I just think Presti is obviously the best example of being in that area where you might be able to get away with it.
Sure.
But I just think a lot of these teams now, you could just say theoretically, look, what do you want? Because we'll do it. And I think it's going to be weird.
If someone was willing to take Julius Randle and a whole bunch of picks for the first pick, why not?
I mean, no. I think you say, fine, you can have whoever you want on this team.
I would never trade RJ. Not in a million years.
Luke, I love RJ, but I would pack his bags and send him wherever he had to go if it meant Victor was on the Knicks. Forget about it. You would have to. There's very few players in the league.
What happens?
Like, theoretically, would you trade Giannis for him? Would you go Giannis for the first pick?
I think I just sent that tweet. Jalen Rose said there's only 3 players in the NBA he wouldn't give up for Victor. It was Giannis, Jokic, and Luka, and I agree with that. I might even put LeBron in there because I still think LeBron has a couple of years left in the tank to lift my team to a championship. But
I think I agree.
Let me ask you something.
I think I would probably trade Zion for him.
What is the franchise? Up. Yeah, maybe. I mean, what is the financial value added to your franchise if you win an NBA championship?
A ton of money.
Right, that's what I mean.
I don't know the number, but
if it's like $200 million and Giannis has the potential to bring home 3 rings, then the Wembanyama trade isn't worth it. You know what I mean?
It's a fair point. I also I mean, I don't think Giannis would be the one, but I just think I like this now that we have really hammered down, and I think everyone universally is hammered down on like this guy is the guy and he's legit. Theoretically, what would it take to get him if you landed the first pick? And like there is a number. There's a number for everything.
Like, if I'm a team who already has an established forward that I drafted in the last 3 years, like the Magic, like the Rockets, the Thunder, maybe, I'd definitely listen to offers on the first pick. But if I was someone who really needed that first pick, like the Pacers or the Kings or the Wizards.
I mean, it would also have to be one of those, like, it's an unrealistic home run offer where I'm not even saying a team would offer it, but I'm just saying if they came to you and said, look, here's all of our picks that everyone's been lauding us for years. Here's all. I mean,
there's going to be offers, right? Like you get the first overall pick. The other GMs are calling.
They have to.
Right?
Literally, it would be irresponsible not to. But
exactly right. So I mean,
but I also think you kind of do what the Nets did all offseason and just say, look, unless you're bringing something that is so insanely unrealistic, no. So I do think that could be the one place where we see that stall. But I just like having the conversation nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, I think what the Nets did happens a lot. I just think it was very public with the Nets, with the whole Kevin Durant requesting out and everything like that. I think it happens all the time. I think there are disgruntled stars everywhere we go, or something with high value that gets a lot of calls, like a first pick, right? I'm sure the Magic took calls on, hey, do you want this person and a couple picks for the first pick? Well, we'll take it off your hands for this price. So I think GMs call each other all the time. I think presidents of basketball operations, I think organizations are always looking to increase the value on their roster.
Yeah, definitely.
So
I do though. I think It starts in a week, but I think we're in for a very weird NBA season because we're going to see races on both ends that I don't think we've seen in the past. I think there's so much parity at the top, and I think there's going to be a rush to the bottom. So
I think after the All-Star break, we're going to see teams really separate themselves, right? So people are going to come back from the break. Trade deadline is going to happen. I mean, there are teams like the Chicago Bulls with Drummond hitting threes yesterday. Like, how much value does Vooch have now if Andre Drummond, who we all know is a great rebounder, he's stepping in and hitting threes at 27%, right?
Still bad, but yeah.
Still bad, but if it's my center position and, like, you know, my other players are like DeMar DeRozan, who's not really a great shooter, and Pat Williams, who isn't a great shooter, any type of spacing my center can offer is. And it's not like Vooch was all that efficient on offense last year anyway, right? So, you know, if Andre Drummond can give me 12 a night, like 1-3, and why not take it, you know? So
it's a fair point.
You know, and I can trade Vooch for a backup center. So
yeah,
I think you'll see guys like that move. Obviously, the Jazz have to move Clarkson and Conley, and the Spurs have some guys they have to move. I think the Bucks could definitely be a buyer.
And you also just never know who else is going to get involved. You never know, like, you know, look at, I mean, the Celtics way back when Gordon Hayward gets injured on the first night. You never know who's going to get involved.
I think the Cavs, I think, are going to continue to buy. I think they've done a good job. I think they're going to start buying into that roster a little bit. I think the Bucks still need to make a move. The fact that Jay Crowder is expected to go to the Hawks, I think, is kind of surprising because I feel he would fit better elsewhere on like a Bucks, or, you know, going back and reuniting with the Heat or something like that. I know the Sixers have PJ Tucker. You need someone like that on your roster, a grit and grind who kind of, you know, does a little bit of everything and spaces the floor. So, I mean, I really think teams are going to separate themselves come All-Star break. But
yeah, definitely. I mean, I personally think sooner, but I agree with you. I think it's going to be very apparent who's going which way, and like the deadline's just going to be so strange because you are going to have teams that are like, look, just take this off my hands. I just want to lose games, which we haven't really seen recently. So I don't know. I don't know.
I think really bad teams this year are going to get gypped a little bit on the trades, right? Like,
whereas they would normally get. Whereas you would normally get way more value, you're not gonna.
Right, but if you're like the Bulls and you're trying to trade Vooch, people know you're not tanking. I think you're gonna get a more fair trade.
Yeah, probably. And also, like, those teams that are in contention, like the players they are trying to trade are probably a little better anyway. You know, if you are a contending-esque team. So I don't know.
And you know, I know we talked about it a little bit. If I'm the Indiana Pacers, I'm trying to push that Westbrook trade as hard as I possibly can. I'm calling the Lakers every day.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Because Miles Turner and Buddy Hield are going to win me a couple games I don't want to win.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Like, undeniably would. But, Luke, we get basketball in a week.
I know. Who's opening again?
It is Lakers Warriors for rings, and then I think Bucks Sixers. Am I making that up? Or Celtics Sixers?
I think it's Celtics. Obviously, the Celtics and the Warriors play the first night. They both play. Okay. The season begins Tuesday, October 18th with a doubleheader on TNT. Sixers, Celtics, Lakers versus Warriors.
Sixers, Celtics, yeah.
The Lakers versus Warriors is going to be really tough, I think.
Yeah, but that's more for the ring unveiling. And also, I go to bed, so.
Lakers are going to, it's like 8 o'clock for me. I'm like, oh my God, I have to stay up and watch this game.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Lakers are going to get absolutely smacked. I'm excited for Celtics Sixers. I'm excited for this new Sixers look.
I also just think those are two teams, like, that's a great game to kind of set the tone in the Eastern Conference because, as we've mentioned, really up in the air.
I think both teams are going to come out firing. I think Embiid's going to have 35. I think Tatum's going to have 30. I think Brown's going to have 30. I could see Harden easily having a triple-double.
We'll see if he's in shape or not.
We'll see. But, you know, there are other teams I'm excited for. I think the Magic are going to be must-see television. I think the Houston Rockets are going to be exciting this year. Jalen Green's going to be dunking a lot. I think Jabari Smith's going to – he's looked good in the preseason. I know he looked really bad in the summer league. He's looked a little better in the preseason.
I honestly, I think other than like the Spurs and the Jazz, there's not really a team that I don't want to watch.
I don't really want to watch the Kings.
But like, they're going to be better than they have been. I'm intrigued by Keegan Murray.
I watched the Zion return to play Pelicans preseason opener. He looked really good.
Yeah.
I really think the Pelicans are going to come out of the gate firing.
It's a question of how much he can play. realistically.
Even then, if he plays 55 games, Pelicans are going to be top 4 in the West.
Wow, that is.
I'm very confident. They looked unreal.
They are really good, and that roster is kind of complete.
They didn't even have Brandon.
They're good at every position.
They're good at every position. They have defense. They have offense. They have a game plan, right? So, obviously, I'm always excited to watch Luka play, and I'm really happy that FIBA basketball happened because I think he's going to be in better shape to start the year. Miami Heat, I don't really want to watch, but I know they'll be good. I think they're going to play some tough games. Toronto Raptors, I'm not really that excited for. And
both of those teams are kind of the boring type of good.
I feel like we didn't touch on the Raptors, but I could see the Raptors kind of sneaking their way up in the lottery. Definitely one of those teams who are like...
Again, yeah. That's what I mean.
They don't really have anybody.
Let's say they start off the season like 2-7. They just have like hiccups. They play tough teams and they're like 2-7 to start the year. I'm not saying it's realistic, but I'm just saying
they're going to make moves that early on. I think Masai Ujiri is incredibly
But I think that conditions them to thinking like, all right, what are we actually building here?
It'll be load management. How many games does OG Anunoby play? How many games does Fred VanVleet play? Siakam. Right. I could see Gary Trent Jr. being on the move because how valuable is he as a shooter and whatnot. So they have guys that can move. I could definitely see it being the year of Scotty Barnes. They just let Scotty Barnes run and be like, it's only you out there this year. Sorry, bud. I
know. Yeah, I do, though. I think it's just going to be a weird year, and I think there's definitely going to be one weird surprise team that's like, screw it, we're all in for Victor.
I'm excited to watch the Cavs. I think they have a new look that I'm excited for, even though they don't really have a bench.
Yeah, but I mean...
I think if they find a way to balance Garland and Mitchell on the floor at the same time.
They can do a shorter rotation, too. Like, just because you do have so much offense that, like, you can have one guy sitting, and then, like, you can have between... Garland and Mitchell, like you just pick who's on the bench and who's playing with one of your two bigs, you'll be fine. And like you throw Kevin Love in, you have enough leadership. I don't know. I think they're fine.
I know Ben Simmons came back to play. I'm kind of excited to see Ben Simmons and what he can do with the Nets team, even though they're kind of dysfunctional.
My DPOI pick. We'll see how that goes.
It's always fun to watch.
Except I think they're going to blow it up, but that's why I'm keeping an eye on because I do think that we could see them swing.
I'm not excited about Hawks basketball this year. I won't lie.
Oh, I am. I think Trey and DeJounte is going to be fun.
I think they're going to be the same old like.
They're going to be better. They're going to be better, but they didn't get that much better.
Always excited to watch the Knicks play. Oh my god, I might pull my hair out watching Julius Randle this year, but they've looked good in preseason
because they play garbage teams. They played Detroit and Indiana. Like, they didn't play anyone that's, like, winning a championship this year.
No.
So, of course, they look good. And it's preseason. No one's trying.
It's about beating the bad teams, okay?
I guess, yeah.
And then, I'm not excited at all for Wizards basketball. I'm confident I will watch less than one Wizards game this year.
I think I agree.
Indiana Pacers, make a trade,
Yep.
I'm excited. I'm watching the Detroit Pistons. The Detroit Pistons are going to be the most exciting team in the NBA this year. Jaden Ivey's going to win Rookie of the Year.
The most exciting team in the NBA this year.
Jaden Ivey's going to start throwing windmills down every game.
A team that's going to finish top 5 of the lottery standings.
They're going to be exciting.
I am intrigued to watch them.
I'm excited to watch Cade's development. Obviously, I have no bias towards Jaden Ivey and his amazingness. So... yeah, it's going to be an exciting year of basketball. I'm glad the season's starting soon. I'm pumped.
But, all righty, Luke. We have been on here for a little over an hour, so we'll cut our listeners loose. Gear up for some NBA action next week. We'll probably definitely record another episode right before the season starts or maybe a little after, either way. But the Hoop Troop's back, baby, and so is another NBA season. Alrighty. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in and join us next time.